My old teachers spent an hour humiliating me for dropping out of high school, not knowing I left to run a $10 million company. The invite came in my email 3 months ago, asking if I'd attend a career day panel at my old high school to discuss alternative paths to success. I almost deleted it until I saw who else was on the panel. Miss Richardson, my junior year English teacher, Mr. Palmer, who taught economics, and Mrs. Chen, the guidance counselor who'd called me into her office 6 times trying to convince me not to drop out. I accepted the invite immediately. The auditorium looked exactly the same blue seats, same water-stained ceiling tiles, same motivational posters about reaching for the stars. I sat in the back row of panelists wearing jeans and a hoodie while the other guests showed up in business suits. Miss Richardson gave me this look when she sat down, like she was trying to place my face. And then I saw the recognition hit. "Is that Marcus Williams?" she whispered to Mr. Palmer, loud enough for me to hear. Mr. Palmer squinted at me through his glasses and frowned. I thought he was in jail or something. The moderator started the panel by having each of us introduce ourselves and explain our career paths. The first panelist was a lawyer who went to Yale. The second was a doctor who'd graduated top of her class from Harvard Medical School. The third ran a non-profit and had a master's degree from Georgetown. Then it was my turn. I said my name was Marcus. I dropped out of this high school 7 years ago, and I currently ran a software company. I kept it vague on purpose. Miss Richardson's hand shot up immediately, not even waiting for the Q&A portion. She asked, with this concerned tone that didn't match the judgment in her eyes, if I regretted my decision to leave high school, and whether I'd encourage these students to follow my path. I said I didn't regret it, that sometimes unconventional choices lead to unconventional success. That's when things got uncomfortable. Mr. Palmer interrupted and said that dropping out was statistically correlated with poverty, unemployment, and incarceration. He pulled up actual statistics on his phone and started reading them aloud to the auditorium full of students. Mrs. Chen joined in, explaining how I'd wasted my potential, how I'd had good grades before I left, how she'd spent hours trying to help me see reason. She told the students that I was a cautionary tale, not a role model. The whole thing turned into an intervention disguised as a panel discussion. Miss Richardson started talking about how hard life is without a diploma, let alone a college degree, how employers won't take you seriously, how you'll always be limited in your options. The other panelists sat there awkwardly, while my former teachers spent 45 minutes essentially telling 300 students that I'd ruined my life and they shouldn't make the same mistake. At one point, Mr. Palmer directly asked me what I did at my software company, with this skeptical tone that implied he didn't believe I actually had a real job. I told him I was the founder and CEO. He laughed, literally laughed, then asked what the company's revenue was, like he was trying to catch me in a lie. I said we did about 10 million in annual revenue. The auditorium went quiet. Mrs. Chen's expression shifted from pity to confusion. Miss Richardson looked like I'd slapped her. Mr. Palmer said that was impossible, that you can't run a $10 million company without a high school diploma, let alone a college degree. So I pulled out my phone and opened our company website, showed them the About page with my photo and title, showed them the TechCrunch article from last year about our Series A funding round, showed them the Forbes 30 Under 30 list where I'd been featured 6 months ago. I explained that I'd dropped out because I'd been teaching myself to code since I was 12, and by 16, I'd built an app that got acquired by a larger company for $400,000. I used that money to start my current company at 17. I didn't need a diploma to prove I could solve problems. I needed time and freedom to build something that mattered. The students started asking real questions then, about how I learned to code, about the challenges of running a company so young, about whether they should consider entrepreneurship, but my teachers sat there in stunned silence. Miss Richardson's face had gone red. Mr. Palmer kept refreshing my company's website on his phone like he was looking for proof it was fake. Mrs. Chen stared at her hands. After the panel ended, Mrs. Chen approached me in the parking lot. I expected an apology, maybe even congratulations, but what she said instead made me realize this wasn't over. "Marcus, I need to speak with you privately," Mrs. Chen said, her voice low and urgent. She glanced over her shoulder toward the school building. "Not here." I followed her to a coffee shop 2 blocks away. The entire walk, she kept checking behind us like she was worried we were being followed. When we finally sat down with our drinks, her hands were shaking. "The school board is already trying to contain this," she said, stirring her tea without looking up. "Principal Donovan called an emergency meeting the minute the panel ended." "Contain what?" I asked. "The fact that I'm successful without a diploma?" Mrs. Chen nodded. "That's exactly it. You've become a liability to their narrative. You know how much funding depends on graduation rates and college acceptances." She pulled out her phone and showed me an email that had been sent to all staff members just 20 minutes after the panel ended. It claimed I had misrepresented my accomplishments and that teachers should correct any misinformation students might have heard. "They're saying I lied? I couldn't believe it. Everything I showed them is public information." "They're desperate," Mrs. Chen said. "Miss Richardson is already telling anyone who will listen that you must have fabricated the whole thing. Mr. Palmer is claiming your website is some elaborate hoax." She leaned forward. "I have a friend who's an attorney. She specializes in education law. I think you should meet with her." "Why would I need a lawyer?" I asked, though the knot forming in my stomach suggested I already knew the answer. "Because Principal Donovan is drafting a formal statement demanding you publicly apologize for misleading students about your success. And if you refuse," she hesitated, "they're threatening to contact colleges that any students who were inspired by you apply to, warning them about your dishonesty." My phone buzzed. An email from Miss Richardson. "Mr. Williams, I'm concerned about the claims you made today regarding your supposed company. Please provide documentation verifying your role and the company's legitimacy, or we'll be forced to take appropriate action." Then another notification, a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. I put it on speaker. Marcus, this is Robert Palmer. That little stunt you pulled today was completely inappropriate. Do you have any idea how many students you've potentially led astray? I've spoken with several board members who agree this crosses a line. One of them has already found evidence that the people on your company website are paid actors. This ends now, or there will be serious consequences. Mrs. Chen's eyes widened. They're going after you hard. This isn't just about being embarrassed anymore. My parents called next. Dad sounded worried. Marcus, the school principal just called us. He's saying something about you misrepresenting yourself at a panel. He mentioned potential legal action for fraud. What's going on? I explained everything while Mrs. Chen sat across from me, nodding sympathetically. When I hung up, she slid a business card across the table. My lawyer friend, call her tonight. She stood to leave but paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry about today. I should have stood up for you. I sat alone for a while, scrolling through more emails from teachers questioning my integrity, my company, my entire life story, each one more condescending than the last. Each one refusing to acknowledge the simple truth that I had succeeded without following their prescribed path. That night, I made 2 calls. First to my company's legal team, requesting all documentation of our business, funding, and my role as founder and CEO. Then to Mrs. Chen's lawyer friend, who listened carefully before giving me direct advice. Bring everything to the emergency board meeting tomorrow. Every document, every award, every piece of press. Make it impossible for them to deny your success. I hung up and started preparing. They wanted to silence me because I represented a threat to their system. They couldn't accept that their way wasn't the only way to succeed. Tomorrow, I would show them exactly who Marcus Williams really was. The emergency school board meeting was set for 7 p.m. in the same auditorium where I'd been humiliated the day before. I arrived 20 minutes early with a portfolio thick enough to silence even the most dedicated skeptics. My company's legal team had worked through the night, compiling everything from our incorporation documents to tax filings, press clippings, and investor agreements. Mrs. Chen was already waiting outside, pacing nervously in the parking lot. They've been in there for an hour already, she whispered when I approached. Principal Donovan called a pre-meeting with the teachers and board members. I think they're coordinating their response. Let them coordinate, I said, patting my portfolio. I've got something better than accusations. I've got facts. We walked in together to find the auditorium half filled with teachers, administrators, and a handful of curious parents who'd somehow heard about the controversy. Miss Richardson and Mr. Palmer sat in the front row beside Principal Donovan, all 3 huddled together reviewing documents. They looked up when I entered, and I could feel their collective glare like a physical force. Mr. Williams, Principal Donovan said, standing up, thank you for joining us. We've been discussing the situation from yesterday's panel. The situation where I told the truth about my success, and you all decided to call me a liar, I asked, keeping my voice level despite the anger bubbling beneath the surface. Miss Richardson's face flushed red. We've been reviewing your claims, Marcus. The board has serious concerns about the veracity of your statements. I moved to the front of the room and placed my portfolio on the table. I figured you might. That's why I brought proof. For the next 15 minutes, I methodically laid out document after document. Our Series A funding agreement, tax returns showing our $10 million revenue, the acquisition paperwork from when my first app sold for $400,000 when I was 16, press coverage from multiple reputable sources, my Forbes 30 Under 30 certificate. The room grew increasingly tense as I continued. Some board members leaned forward, examining the documents with growing interest. Others exchanged uncomfortable glances. Miss Richardson stood up abruptly, her chair screeching against the floor. These could easily be fabricated, she declared. Anyone with basic Photoshop skills could create these documents. This proves nothing. I stared at her in disbelief. You think I forged tax returns, and TechCrunch articles, and legal contracts with investor signatures? It wouldn't be the first time a student went to extreme lengths to avoid admitting they made a mistake, Mr. Palmer added, adjusting his glasses. These are elaborate forgeries, nothing more. The auditorium erupted in murmurs. I felt my face growing hot with frustration when a voice from the back of the room cut through the noise. Actually, those documents look legitimate to me, and I should know, since I wrote one of those articles. Everyone turned to see a man in his 30s standing up, notepad in hand. I recognized him immediately, Jason Morales from the Business Journal. He'd profiled my company last year when we announced our expansion. I'm Jason Morales, he said, walking toward the front. I cover tech startups for the Business Journal. I profiled Marcus's company last year and interviewed him extensively. I can verify that everything he's claimed about his business is accurate. Principal Donovan looked like he'd swallowed something sour. Mr. Morales, this is a private school board meeting. How did you? Mrs. Chen called me, Jason said, nodding toward her. Said there might be an interesting story developing about how a successful young entrepreneur was being treated by his former school. She was right. Mrs. Chen stepped forward, her hands trembling slightly as she pulled out her phone. There's something else the board needs to hear. She tapped her screen and placed the phone on the table. A recording began to play. Asterisk, the dropout is coming to career day tomorrow. Asterisk, Miss Richardson's voice, unmistakable. Asterisk, Marcus Williams. Remember him? The one who thought he was too good for school. Asterisk, asterisk, oh, I remember. Asterisk, Mr. Palmer replied in the recording. Asterisk, arrogant kid, always thought he knew better than everyone else. Asterisk, asterisk, well, he's apparently running some kind of tech company now. Asterisk, Miss Richardson continued. Asterisk, claims to be successful. I looked him up. He's actually gotten some press. Forbes 30, under 30, if you can believe it. Asterisk, asterisk, so what's the plan? Asterisk, Principal Donovan's voice now. Asterisk, we can't have him encouraging students to drop out. Asterisk, asterisk, we use him as an example. Asterisk, Miss Richardson said. Asterisk, we let him talk, then we publicly discredit him. Show the students that even if you get lucky after dropping out, you're still missing fundamental education. We humiliate him a little, make it clear his path isn't viable. Asterisk, I like it. Asterisk, Principal Donovan replied. Asterisk, these alternative success stories are destroying our college placement statistics. Make an example of him. Asterisk. The recording ended, and the room fell completely silent. Miss Richardson's face had gone from red to ghostly white. Mr. Palmer stared at the table, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. You knew, I said quietly. You knew about my success before I even came to that panel. You planned to humiliate me regardless of what I said. Mrs. Chen's voice shook as she spoke. I've been recording their meetings for months. They've been doing this to any student who finds success outside traditional education. Marcus isn't the first. Principal Donovan lunged toward the table, reaching for Mrs. Chen's phone. That recording is school property and was obtained illegally. I'm confiscating it now. Jason Morales stepped between them. Actually, I already have a copy, and I believe the public has a right to know when educators are deliberately sabotaging former students. The school board members began arguing among themselves. Some defended the teachers, claiming they were just trying to protect current students from making poor decisions. Others were clearly horrified by the recording. This is outrageous, one board member said, standing up. We should be celebrating Mr. Williams' success, not trying to discredit it. He abandoned his education, another countered. What kind of message does that send? While they argued, my phone buzzed with a text from David Chen, our lead investor. Just got a strange call from someone claiming to be from your old high school. They said some concerning things about you. What's going on? I quickly typed back explaining the situation. 3 minutes later, he replied, our legal team is on their way. Don't say another word until they arrive. I looked up from my phone to find Miss Richardson staring at me. Her expression a mixture of anger and something else, fear. Maybe. You've made your point, Marcus, she said, her voice softer now. But you have to understand, we're trying to protect our students. From what? I asked. From knowing there are multiple paths to success? From understanding that education can happen outside a classroom? Before she could answer, the auditorium doors swung open and 3 people in suits walked in. The lead attorney, Sarah Patel, nodded at me before addressing the room. I represent Horizon Tech Ventures, the primary investor in Mr. Williams' company, she announced. We've become aware of potentially defamatory statements being made about our investment and its founder. We're here to ensure this situation is resolved appropriately. Principal Donovan's face drained of color. This is a school matter. It became a business matter when you threatened the reputation of a company valued at over $50 million, Sarah interrupted. Now, I suggest we discuss how to move forward in a way that doesn't result in a lawsuit. The board meeting that had started as an attempt to silence me had transformed into something entirely different. As Sarah conferred with the board members, Jason Morales slid into the seat next to me. Hell of a story, he whispered. Mind if I interview you when this is over? Successful entrepreneur faces backlash from former teachers has a nice ring to it. I nodded, watching as the school officials who had been so confident in their authority just minutes ago now scrambled to contain a situation spiraling rapidly beyond their control. The board was splitting before my eyes, half wanting to support the teachers, half recognizing the disaster unfolding. And somewhere in the middle of it all, I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every student who'd ever been told there was only one path to success. The next morning, I woke up to my phone vibrating itself off my nightstand. 17 missed calls, 38 text messages, and over 100 email notifications. My company's PR director had sent an urgent message. Marcus, we need to talk now. Your high school drama is trending. I clicked the link she'd sent and felt my stomach drop. The Business Journal had published Jason Morales' article with the headline, Tech Entrepreneur Humiliated by Former Teachers Who Plotted Against Him. Below it was a photo of me from the panel, looking stunned as Miss Richardson lectured me about how I'd ruined my life. This is getting out of control, I muttered, scrolling through the comments. People were furious on my behalf, calling for the teachers to be fired, demanding the school district investigate. My phone rang again. David Chen, our lead investor. Marcus, our legal team just arrived at the school. The superintendent has agreed to an emergency meeting at 2 p.m. I need you there. I'll be there, I promised, already dreading another confrontation. When I arrived at the district office, the parking lot was filled with news vans. Reporters swarmed me as I stepped out of my car. Mr. Williams, how do you feel about your teachers' attempts to discredit you? Is it true they knew about your success before inviting you to speak? Are you planning to sue the school district? I pushed through the crowd without answering, only to find an even more chaotic scene inside. Our legal team was already seated at one end of a long conference table. At the other end sat Principal Donovan, Miss Richardson, Mr. Palmer, and several people I assumed were district officials. Mrs. Chen sat alone in the middle, looking like she wished she could disappear. Mr. Williams, the superintendent said, rising to greet me. I'm Dr. Harlow. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. Before I could respond, the door burst open and a camera crew pushed in. This is a private meeting, Dr. Harlow snapped. Not anymore, said a woman I recognized from the local news. This story has national attention now. Miss Richardson just gave us an exclusive interview claiming Mr. Williams is manipulating the situation. All eyes turned to Miss Richardson, who straightened her blazer and lifted her chin defiantly. I stand by what I said, she announced. Mr. Williams has taken a simple misunderstanding and twisted it for publicity. He's using his platform to attack dedicated educators who only want what's best for our students. Sarah Patel, our lead attorney, opened her laptop. Is that why you said this on camera this morning? She pressed play on a video clip where Miss Richardson was telling a reporter, Marcus Williams has always been manipulative. He's using his money and connections to bully teachers who dared to question his choices. You called me manipulative? I asked, feeling a fresh wave of anger. After that recording proved you planned to humiliate me before I even showed up? Mr. Palmer leaned forward. The recording was taken out of context. There is no context that justifies what you did, I shot back. Dr. Harlow raised her hands. Please, let's keep this professional. We're here to find a resolution. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I was a student at Lincoln 5 years ago. Miss Richardson did the same thing to me when I started my own business instead of going to college. She told everyone I was lying about my success. Then another text. Palmer failed me in economics after I told him I was skipping college to work at my family's restaurant, said I needed to learn my place. More messages flooded in as the meeting continued. Former students sharing stories of how these same teachers had mocked their ambitions, sabotaged their alternative plans, or discouraged them from pursuing anything outside traditional education. I showed the messages to Sarah, who nodded and made a note. Mr. Williams isn't the only victim here, she said, addressing the room. We've received dozens of messages from former students describing similar treatment. This appears to be a pattern. Mrs. Chen cleared her throat. It is a pattern. I've been documenting it for years. She pulled a flash drive from her purse and slid it across the table. Student testimonials, emails between faculty members discussing how to correct students with entrepreneurial ambitions, and performance reviews where teachers were praised for maintaining high college enrollment statistics by any means necessary. Principal Donovan's face turned ashen. That's confidential school information. You had no right. I had every right, Mrs. Chen interrupted, her voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. These are kids' futures you're playing with. For years, I watched you target students who wanted to pursue trades, start businesses, or take gap years. Anyone who didn't fit your narrow definition of success. Mr. Palmer stood up suddenly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. This is absurd. We're educators. Our job is to guide students toward the paths that will serve them best. Your job is to educate them, not dictate their futures, I countered. You want to know why I targeted you specifically, Marcus? Mr. Palmer's voice dropped dangerously low. Because you disrespected education itself. You acted like what we do doesn't matter, like our years of expertise and knowledge were worthless compared to your coding skills. The room fell silent at his admission. So you admit you targeted him, Sarah said quietly, making another note. Dr. Harlow looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. Perhaps we should take a brief recess. No, I said firmly. I want to hear what else Mr. Palmer has to say about why he decided to sabotage my reputation. Mr. Palmer's face was red now. You represent everything wrong with today's culture. Quick success without putting in the work, shortcuts instead of foundation. And now you're back, flaunting your money like it proves you were right all along. I've worked harder than you could possibly imagine, I replied, keeping my voice steady despite my racing heart. Just not in the way you think people should work. Dr. Harlow cleared her throat. I think we need to focus on resolution. Our legal team has prepared a settlement offer. Sarah accepted the document and scanned it quickly before passing it to me. My eyes widened as I read the terms. A modest financial settlement in exchange for my signature on a non-disclosure agreement that would prevent me from discussing the incident publicly. You want me to stay quiet, I said, looking up from the paper. You're offering me money to pretend none of this happened. It's standard procedure in situations like this, Dr. Harlow explained. It protects all parties involved and allows everyone to move forward. I slid the document back across the table. I'm not interested in your money or your silence. Be reasonable, Marcus, Principal Donovan urged. What do you want from us? Accountability, I said simply. Public acknowledgement of what happened, not just to me, but to every student you've discouraged from following their own path. And I want systemic changes to ensure it never happens again. That's not how these things work, Dr. Harlow began, but I cut her off. It is now, because I'm not the only one who knows what happened, and I'm not the only one who was hurt by it. I gestured toward the window, where more news vans were pulling into the parking lot. This isn't going away with a settlement and an NDA. Sarah nodded in agreement. My client is declining your offer. We'll be requesting a formal disciplinary hearing for the teachers involved, with all affected former students invited to testify. As if on cue, my phone lit up with another message, this one from a group calling themselves Alternative Success Stories, former students who'd found unconventional paths to achievement despite the school's discouragement. The hearing will happen, Dr. Harlow conceded, her expression grim, but I hope you understand the impact this will have on people's careers and reputations. I do understand, I replied, thinking of all the students whose dreams had been crushed by these same educators. That's precisely why it needs to happen. As we prepared to leave, Mrs. Chen approached me. Thank you for standing up to them. I should have done it years ago. Why didn't you? I asked. She looked down at her hands. Fear, security, the same reasons most people stay in situations they know are wrong. She looked up, her eyes clear and determined, but not anymore. Outside, reporters surrounded us again, shouting questions. This time, I stopped to speak. This isn't just about me, I told them. It's about recognizing that success comes in many forms, and education should open doors, not close them. I'm fighting for every student who's been told their dreams don't fit the approved template. As I walked to my car, I knew the real battle was just beginning. The disciplinary hearing would be brutal. Miss Richardson and Mr. Palmer wouldn't go down without a fight, but neither would I. Some fights are worth having, even when they're difficult, especially when they're difficult. Because sometimes, the only way to fix a broken system is to confront it head on. The disciplinary hearing lasted nearly 6 hours. I sat in a cramped conference room at the district office watching Miss Richardson, Mr. Palmer, and Principal Donovan defend themselves to a panel that looked increasingly uncomfortable with each new testimony. We were simply trying to provide students with realistic expectations, Miss Richardson insisted, her voice steady but her hands betraying her nerves as she repeatedly adjusted her glasses. Mr. Williams' success is an anomaly, not a blueprint. The panel, 3 school board members, 2 district administrators, and an independent education consultant, reviewed the evidence in silence. Mrs. Chen's recordings, testimonials from former students, and the damning emails where teachers explicitly discussed how to correct entrepreneurial ambitions. When the decision finally came, it felt anticlimactic. After careful consideration, the lead administrator announced, "We've determined that while the conduct of these educators was inappropriate and unprofessional, termination is not warranted. Formal reprimands will be placed in their personnel files, and all three will undergo mandatory professional development on diverse career pathways." The room erupted in protests. Former students who testified stood up, shouting about the injustice. My legal team exchanged glances, clearly disappointed but not surprised. "This is typical," Sarah whispered to me. "Schools protect their own." I nodded, watching Miss Richardson's shoulders relax with visible relief. Mr. Palmer stared straight ahead, his expression unreadable. Principal Donovan actually smiled. They'd keep their jobs, they'd continue shaping young minds, and despite all the evidence, despite the public outcry, the most they faced was a strongly worded letter in a file few would ever see. As we filed out of the room, Mrs. Chen caught up to me in the hallway. "I'm sorry, Marcus. I hoped for more." Her eyes were red-rimmed from testifying all day. "It's not over," I told her, an idea forming as I watched the teachers celebrating their victory with handshakes and relieved smiles. They may have kept their jobs, but that doesn't mean we can't change the system. 3 weeks later, I stood in the same auditorium where I'd been humiliated, addressing a different audience. The school board, superintendent, teachers, parents, and students all gathered for what the invitation had called a special announcement regarding educational innovation. "Today, I'm pleased to announce the establishment of the Alternative Pathways Scholarship," I began, watching faces in the crowd shift from curiosity to surprise. "This $250,000 annual fund will support Lincoln High students pursuing entrepreneurial ventures, trade education, or other non-traditional paths to success." The room buzzed with whispers. Principal Donovan's smile had vanished. "Additionally, my company is launching the Dropout to CEO Mentorship Program, connecting students interested in entrepreneurship with successful business leaders who took unconventional routes. Because success isn't one size fits all, and education shouldn't be either." I caught Miss Richardson's eye in the front row. Her face remained carefully neutral, but I could see the tension in her jaw. "This program will be advised by someone who understands both traditional education and alternative paths," I continued. "Someone who spent years advocating for students, even when it was difficult. I'd like to introduce the program's new director, Mrs. Chen." Mrs. Chen stood up from her seat, receiving a warm round of applause as she joined me at the podium. "Thank you, Marcus," she said, her voice clear and confident. "After 15 years as a guidance counselor, I've submitted my resignation effective immediately to pursue this new opportunity." Principal Donovan's face went pale. He hadn't known. "Every student deserves to have their dreams taken seriously," Mrs. Chen continued. "Every path deserves respect. I'm proud to help build a bridge between traditional education and alternative success." The announcement made local headlines that evening and national education blogs by the next morning. My inbox filled with messages from educators across the country wanting to implement similar programs in their districts. Former students reached out, offering to mentor current ones. The conversation was changing. 2 days later, I received an unexpected email from Miss Richardson asking to meet privately. We agreed on a coffee shop off-campus neutral territory. She arrived looking different somehow, smaller. The confident, authoritative teacher who had once made me feel 2 inches tall now clutched her coffee cup with nervous hands. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," she began, not quite meeting my eyes. "What you're doing with the scholarship program, it's good, better than what we deserved after how we treated you." I waited, saying nothing. "I've been teaching for 27 years, she continued after an uncomfortable silence. "I started when college was the only respectable path to success. When dropout rates were directly tied to poverty and crime, I thought I was protecting students by pushing them toward what I knew worked. Times change," I said simply. "Yes," she nodded, finally looking up. "They do. And I didn't." She took a deep breath. "What you may not know is that I tried to start my own business once. A small bookstore. It failed spectacularly within 8 months, and I lost everything. I crawled back to teaching with my tail between my legs." This revelation surprised me. I had no idea. 5.love. Nobody does. "I buried that failure so deep I convinced myself it never happened." Her voice cracked slightly. "And then I spent decades making sure no student of mine would ever make the same mistake. I called it protection. It was really projection." The apology wasn't perfect, but it felt genuine. I could see the regret in her eyes, the weight of years spent steering students away from paths that might have been right for them. "What will you do now?" I asked. "Keep teaching, but differently." She smiled sadly. "The reprimand in my file ensures I'll never be promoted to department head, but maybe that's for the best. Some of us shouldn't be setting policy." Mr. Palmer, on the other hand, never reached out. I heard through Mrs. Chen that he'd announced his early retirement, effective at the end of the school year. He told colleagues it was for health reasons, but everyone knew the real story. His reputation had been irreparably damaged, not by me, but by his own actions finally coming to light. By May, our mentorship program had matched 37 current Lincoln students with successful entrepreneurs, tradespeople, and self-taught professionals. The school had implemented a new multiple pathways to success policy that explicitly prohibited discouraging students from pursuing alternative education routes. When graduation rolled around, I received a surprising invitation from Dr. Harlow to give the commencement address. Standing at the podium, looking out at hundreds of seniors in their caps and gowns, I thought about how differently my own life might have turned out if someone had validated my unconventional path instead of trying to force me onto the traditional one. "Success isn't measured by degrees or diplomas," I told them. "It's measured by impact, by fulfillment, by whether you've used your unique talents to create value in the world. Some of you will find that through college, others through trades, entrepreneurship, creative pursuits, or paths that don't even exist yet." I spotted Miss Richardson in the audience, nodding slightly. "The most important education isn't what you've received in these classrooms," I continued. It's learning how to learn, how to adapt, how to pick yourself up when you fail, because you will fail, all of us do. What matters is what you build from those failures. After the ceremony, I met with 5 former students who'd been sabotaged by the same teachers who had targeted me. Each had a story of having their dreams dismissed, their alternative plans ridiculed. Now, they were the first cohort of interns at my company's new Education Innovation Division. We're going to redesign how schools approach career guidance, I explained as we toured our offices. And who better to lead that change than people who experience the flaws in the current system firsthand? One of them, a young woman named Alicia who'd been told her graphic design aspirations were unrealistic, looked around the office with wide eyes. I never thought I'd be here, she admitted. After Miss Richardson told me I was wasting my talent, I almost gave up completely. Well, now you're helping make sure no other student hears those words, I told her. The final piece fell into place when we hired 2 former teachers from Lincoln to join our team, not Miss Richardson or Mr. Palmer, but younger teachers who had privately disagreed with the school's narrow definition of success, but hadn't had the courage or platform to challenge it. We're building something revolutionary here, one of them told me during her interview, a bridge between traditional education and the real world that respects multiple paths to success. That's exactly what we were doing, not erasing the past, but learning from it, not destroying the system, but evolving it, creating space for students to find their own way without judgment or sabotage. Sometimes the best revenge isn't tearing someone down, it's building something better than they could have imagined. Something that makes their limitations obvious without you having to point them out. As for me, I still run my company. We hit $15 million in revenue this year. I still don't have a high school diploma or a college degree, and I'm still proving, every single day, that success doesn't follow just one path.